Good evening, members. Welcome to the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee for Leader and Finance and Performance on the 10th of March 2021. The meeting is going out via remote video link. So item 1 is our roll call and virtual meetings explanation. So I welcome members of Democratic Services, Legal Services and Management team. And I will now conduct the roll call. Councillor Paul for Vice Chairman, please.
Present.
Councillor Alison Bennett.
Present.
Okay. Councillor Heidi Brunson. Councillor Heidi Brunson. Okay. Councillor Cartwright.
I'm present.
Thank you. Councillor Coote.
Present.
Councillor Rachel Cromie.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Eves.
Present.
Councillor Hicks.
Present.
Councillor Jackson.
Present.
Councillor Andrew Lee, I understand he's going to be a little bit late, so I'll announce it when he does arrive. Councillor Phillips, please.
Present.
Councillor Lynn Stockwell.
Present.
Councillor Trumbull.
Present.
And Councillor Whitaker.
Present.
And Leader of the Council, Councillor Jonathan Ash-Edwards.
Present, Chairman.
And Deputy Leader, Judy Llewellyn Burke.
Present.
Thank you. The Solicitor Tom Clark will give us the rundown of how the meeting is conducted, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This meeting is a virtual meeting by virtue of regulations that were introduced on the 4th of April in response to the present pandemic. Members are in charge of their own microphone, but the meeting will be conducted by the Chairman, who will call speakers. The Zoom arrangements are back to where we were before. So you've got electronic voting, green button being for, red button against. If you wish to abstain, neither button. And at the end of the meeting, please stay where you are until we get informed that the live stream has ended. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. Item 2, to note substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure 4. There are none. To receive apologies for absence, I have none. To receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. So if you have anything, please use the raise hand button. It's under reactions now. I see none. Thank you. Item 5, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on 31st of January 2021. Use the yes/no buttons, please. Thank you. That is carried. That is unanimous. Item 6, to consider items that the Chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. Moving on to item 7, Sustainability Strategy Progress Report. The roadmap report is going to be introduced by the Assistant Chief Executive, Judy Holmes. Judy, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, I'll basically talk about the roadmap and then hand to my colleague Emma Sheridan, who will talk about the backward-looking aspect of this report, which is about the progress to date. So, as I've said, the report takes a forward and a backwards look. The backwards look is looking at the progress made specifically during 2020-21 on the implementation of the current sustainability strategy. However, the report also takes an important forward look. It basically builds on the work that you've already done in agreeing the revised corporate plan in September 2020, and specifically the work to merge both the sustainability and the Council's economic development work into a single strategy. The approach builds on the impact of the pandemic but also on the government's approach to the green recovery plans, and takes advantage of building on those things. I'm very happy to answer questions, but the proposed approach is set out in paragraphs 9 through to 14. Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, I was on mute. Any questions relating to pages 9 to 12 and paragraphs 9 to 12? Please raise your hand. Councillor Whitaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's just a question really. In regard to the section on paragraphs 9 to 14, will there be a consultant appointed, or is there a consultant already appointed and it's continuing work? I'm thinking it mentions the evidence base, or will there be a new consultant required for this? Thank you.
Judy, would you like to take that?
Thank you. Yes, in fact, there'll probably be a number of consultants. This work will, as I say, build on the current council's current work and also on its current evidence base. So we will be engaging a number of consultants to help advise the work of the working group. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Yes, Chairman. In terms of the existing sustainability strategy, it runs to about 20 pages, so it's not entirely clear if there's outstanding items on that strategy, which was to 2023, and I'm assuming it will be merged with as part of the ongoing objectives of economic development. But I noticed later, but in terms of reference, only referred to the economic strategy and not to incorporating the sustainability strategy.
Councillor Hicks, you're just breaking up a bit. But
apologies, I'm just
sentence.
In terms of the what happens to the existing sustainability strategy, in terms of there were 20 pages of detailed actions. Not clear which ones have been responded to and which ones haven't, and in terms of where will those be taken on board in terms of the working group and the new strategy.
Thank you, Councillor. Judy, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want to preempt the work of the working group, but part of the role will be to scope what elements of current strategies are relevant and appropriate to take forward into new strategies, and to be building on new initiatives and government plans. So it would be difficult to say which is out, which is in, but I think that it's the work of the working group essentially to be scoping that.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Eves.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report very much, particularly as we didn't get one last year. I feel we've lost a lot of time on matters of sustainability. I deplore the fact that the sustainability panel disappeared after only 2 meetings, but it's good that we're starting again, and so we look forward to building a green recovery. That is great. I don't understand, I also welcome the carbon baselining. I think that's wonderful for the whole district, so that Mr. Barton can start measuring from a sort of a 0 point with his KPIs. That's very good. Why only 8 members? Why not any members who want to? What time of day will the panel meet? And could you clarify what bi-monthly means? Because it could apparently mean fortnightly or once every 2 months, and it doesn't seem to add up mathematically to August being our delivery of the report. I welcome the fact that we got an email just now saying that for all policies, there will now be an environmental clause at the end, just as you have an equality clause and a risk clause. I wonder if we have a risk register in this council, and if so, do we have environmental issues, climate change on that risk register? If someone could answer that one, thank you. And where the sort of homework is listed.
Councillor Eves,
Sorry.
can I?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just got a bit of feedback in my ear. Yeah, if you've got a lot of questions, if members have got a lot of questions, can you tell me in advance, because it's trying to capture them all as you go along. So just for any future, for any other people coming on who've got a number of questions, it will help me to one at a time so we can capture them all. So carry on, and we'll try and if we miss some, we'll come back to you.
That's more or less it, but background papers, I don't think it's very useful to put in the UN sustainability goals. I think it would be really good if people could look at the Climate Change Committee 2020 progress report. This is an independent body that advises the government, and it's got some great ideas in there. So that is about a green and resilient recovery following the pandemic. It's up to date above all after the pandemic. It was written in June, so it's not too bad. And then, of course, the government's own 10-point plan is good reading. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Andes. In terms, and I'd like to thank Councillor Alison Bennett earlier. She gave me some advanced questions similar to yours in vein of the setup, around the setup of the working group. So I'm just going to refer that to Tom Clark to start with, and just give his position on the makeup of the working group around the numbers, and can other councillors be involved in that group, etc.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a working group of this committee, so it would be usual for the membership to be drawn from this committee. The 8 members are effectively just over half the committee, so it is fairly representative, but it can't be too big because it then becomes unmanageable. You might as well just have the whole committee on the working group. So the idea is that you have people that are very committed to this work and are prepared to attend meetings. Councillor Eves referred to the numbers. Bi-monthly is every other month, but it is on the basis that you will probably have to have additional meetings and be prepared to attend those at short notice. So we're looking for 8 people from this committee who are willing to deal with matters possibly at short notice. Over a 6 to 8 month period.
Thank you, Tom. And Judy Holmes, did you want to add any comments to that?
No, I think the only other question was about risk. And yes, the council does have a strategic risk register, which is reviewed every year. And clearly, consideration will be given to the most appropriate strategic risks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Eves, was there any other questions that you needed answering that we might have missed?
Yes, Chair, just so that the maths doesn't really add up. If we're to report back in August and we meet in, say, April and June and August, that's 3 times. We're supposed to meet 4 to 5 times. I'm assuming I'm on this committee, which may be presumptuous of me. But if you see what I mean, that seems to me a terribly slow rhythm of work. Thank you.
Judy, would you like to comment?
I wouldn't want to take the numbers too literally. Actually, I think it was just an indication to provide members with an indication, if you like, of the kind of commitment we would be looking for, so that you would be able to consider that when you were making your selection for the appropriate members to attend. I think, as Tom Clark's already said, what works really well with these groups is where we have a cohort of members that can all attend and be committed to attending every meeting if possible, and that they are able to commit to that at the beginning. So I wouldn't be too literal about the number. I think we will have to see how the work develops, and it may be that depending on how the work comes forwards, we'll need to schedule in additional meetings or push meetings back depending on the time frame that consultants are reporting on. but it was just a general idea.
Thank you. Councillor Lynn Stockwell.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things, you'll be pleased to know. Will the scope of the committee, working party, look at how we award contracts within the council in terms of whether they are compliant with our own sustainability and climate change policies? And also, are we able to, what's the word I'm looking for, encourage particularly the housing associations to follow suit, because there are lots of issues, I should imagine, around those sort of areas that affect the whole of our district. Thank you.
Judy, would you take that one?
Thank you. I think Councillor Stockwell's asking about whether we consider sustainability issues when we're awarding contracts.
Yes.
And yes, the criteria looks at a whole host of issues, particularly around social value, for example. So the answer to that is yes. And I think you had another question, sorry.
That was regarding housing associations. How can we bring them on board?
Yes, and I think that might be something that the working group may want to consider. I think it's important that we consider carefully what we can influence and what we can do directly. And I'm sure that part of influencing will be influencing key stakeholders and partners that we work closely with.
Thank you.
Councillor Alison Bennett, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I have 4 points that I want to make on this section. The first one might actually precede paragraph 9, but I wondered whether it would be worth adding into this report a definition of what a sustainable economy strategy is. The reason being that not everything to do with sustainability and tackling the climate emergency can be dealt with within an economic strategy. There are things that sit outside it. So we need to understand, I think, what this strategy comprises and what sits outside it. That's my first suggestion. Secondly, in paragraph 9, and I want to come back on this point about the membership of the working group. It is my view that something as urgent and critical as tackling the climate emergency requires our very best and most knowledgeable councillors in this area to sit on that working group. And because of the way that the council was set up in 2019 with the 3 scrutiny committees, I know certainly within my group that my keenest and most knowledgeable environmentalists aren't on this scrutiny committee. The governance review work has highlighted the importance of drawing on the expertise and knowledge of members right across the council. And I think it would be a really wasted opportunity not to make sure you've got the most talented and knowledgeable environmentalists on this working group. So I'd urge you to reconsider whether actually only taking 8 people from this group of 15 is the right way to go.
Thank you. Shall we stop there, Alison, with the first 2 points? Shall we? Okay, because I might lose the thread. But first one, the definition of sustainability. Judy, do you want to take that one, please?
Definition of sustainable economy.
Sustainable economy. Okay,
Yeah.
understand. Yeah.
And I think that, again, would be preempting the work of the working group. I think one of their first challenges is going to be to understand what they mean by that based on the information already out there, which is referred to in the background papers.
Thank you. On the second question, if you don't mind, Alison, I've got some ideas, my thoughts on that about the makeup of the working group. A little concern I've got is if you've got a working group that are not members of this scrutiny committee, they might come up with some ideas, some very good ideas, or they might come up with some mad ideas, but there may not be any synergy with the actual scrutiny committee itself. So that's one concern I've got. And the feeding into it, as I say, feeding into the main scrutiny committee is, I think, can be a problem. Members can always feed into these working groups. We got them at town council. Any member can talk to their member of the working group, lobby them, whatever, and feed into this group. So I don't see the necessarily need to have members from other working groups. And then you've got to think about this group is responsible for also for economy as well as the scrutiny. So somebody could come up with an idea of, example, 1,000 wind farms, but not thought about the economic side of it. And that's where I think you do need the members from this scrutiny committee. That's my personal opinion, but they're open to members. Councillor Jackson, and I'll come back to, sorry, I haven't finished you, Councillor Bennett. You've got 2 more questions. You can come back, please.
Okay. What are they? Yeah, paragraph 10. It talks about annual review to relevance to ensure that it remains appropriate to the needs of the council and the district. I would suggest we add in there that it remains relevant to responding to the climate emergency, as our knowledge of what is going on in the climate emergency evolves, and worryingly, I suppose, as the breakdown of our climate accelerates, we need to make sure that what we're doing is actually up to date with current scientific knowledge. That was my 3rd point. And my 4th and final point, you'll be pleased to hear, paragraph 11. I would like to suggest that we add in that as well as carbon baselining, we also conduct biodiversity baselining, and that will enable the district to get ahead of government regulations that are coming in that will require us to understand where we are in terms of biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, would you like to comment, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, again, it seems to be the answer, doesn't it, to everything, but we need to not preempt the work of the working group. And I think the idea is that behind the review of relevance is to make sure that the strategy is agile and flexible and isn't just something that sits on a shelf for 5 years and isn't capable of responding to the changes in government policy, in changes to climate change. So it can remain vital, if you like, relevant, exactly what it says on the tin, if you like. So I think the idea behind it is that it is a flexible strategy. And we thought that was the best way of building in the ability to enable this committee to be agile and flexible and responsive to the needs.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I refer to paragraph 12 when we talk about the review of the district plan. Yesterday, when we were at the design workshop, one of the areas which was concerned was sustainable development, and therefore there needs to be really quite cooperation between those who are involved with the reviewing of the district plan and this working group.
Judy, would you like to say that, please?
So I think, Councillor Jackson, you're asking about how the review of the district plan will play into the work that we're doing with this in this working group environment. Is that right?
Sorry, correct.
Yes. I think one of the things that's really going to be a challenge for this working group and actually for this work is that it is of such a cross-cutting nature that it touches virtually every piece of work the council does, every single strategy the council has, and everything that we do. So a lot of the work that we will be relying on will be set out in the district plan. So they will be hand in glove, and one will inform the other. And the other will inform the other. So they're very difficult to tear those apart. Indeed, it will go to the heart of almost everything that the council is doing, which is why it's important that it doesn't just focus on sustainability, but it actually focuses on the sustainable economic development of the district. And you're quite right that it is linked, not just with the district plan actually, but with some of the other council's strategic work.
Thank you.
And you'll see that, you know, we've got Sally Bromfield with us here, who will also be involved in supporting the work of the working group, given her role both in terms of planning but also in economic development.
Thank you. Councillor Cartwright, please.
I must say I'm with Councillor Bennett. I'm wholly unsuited and unknowledgeable on this subject, and therefore not good fodder for your working group. But speaking as a sort of layman, I haven't a clue what a sustainable economy actually is, and will be interested to find out. But in terms of climate change and carbon neutrality, strikes me that the area where the council has the ability to have the most direct impact is on housing policy, because if we can get to the point where we can insist on every new building in mid-Sussex, be it private or commercial, is carbon neutral, we will have made quite a considerable contribution towards the problem. My question is, how far are we away from that? I know that there are building standards and they are verging in this direction, but the absolute standard of having everything carbon neutral seems to be something well worth striving for, and also very measurable.
Judy?
I don't know if I can answer all of that question, and I might need to rely on my colleagues, particularly Sally. I'm not sure whether she's able to help you with that, but I think Councillor Cartwright, you've actually hit the nail on the head there, in that because of the nature of sustainability and economic development, it goes to the heart of everything, including housing policy, and I don't think that as a council we should be doing anything without understanding the potential impact that might have. Hence, again, the fact that this is a very cross-cutting piece of work. And we agree with you that we as a council need to be focusing on the things that we can measure, and the things that we can directly affect, and the things that we can also quite directly influence as well, including things like housing policy, planning policy, and the work that we're doing with our partners. Somebody's already mentioned today the way that we procure, the way that we run our own estate. All of those things I think are really, really important. Chairman, if it's okay, I'm going to ask if Sally's got anything that she wanted to add to that.
Of course. Sally.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just to say that you're absolutely right, building regs are changing. They will take a little bit of time before they apply to all new built development and 100% carbon capture, but they are changing and moving in that direction. I just want to emphasise Judy's point, and it's a point made in paragraph 12 of the report, that we recognise sustainability as such a big piece in its entirety. But of course it will factor or feature in almost all of our strategies, but the district plan is a key part of that. But yes, building regs are changing, but remember they only apply to new development, not existing development, and I think that's another point that you would probably want us to make, and that will have to be dealt with in a different way. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jackson.
Sorry, Chairman, I didn't take my hand down, so I apologise.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I see no other indications. Thank you. So we now go on to page 13 for the update report. Emma Sheridan, please. Emma.
Thank you, Chairman. This part of the report gives members an overview of the work that has continued throughout the past year as part of the sustainability work stream to deliver the existing action plan, despite the obvious challenges of the pandemic and the additional workloads that officers had to take on in terms of our response to that. We were able to continue to do some work to move the actions onwards, although obviously some of our work that involves us engaging with key partners or indeed with our residents and the wider public was hampered by social distancing regulations as well. So The report, it kind of speaks for itself, I think, in terms of outlining what we've done in the last year, and gives an indication of what we think the next steps are. Some of those things are ongoing work streams that will continue. Some of those may take a different direction depending on how the new working group wants to take this work forward in the future. So very happy to take any questions that members might have.
Thank you, Emma. Open to members. Any questions, please? Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of questions, I may. On the local cycling and walking infrastructure, it mentions the towns, but will this go out to the villages to consider whether there can be additional facilities provided there? And just a minor thing, on the electric charging points on the council the council car park, I appreciate it's a private car park, but is there any possibility of the public using those when they're not being used by council staff and for council cars?
Interesting. Emma.
Okay, firstly on the LCWIP, the Local Walking, Cycling and Infrastructure Plan, the funding that we were given for the first phase of that was specifically for the 3 towns in the first instance. As part of the modelling and the technical work that sits behind that, it does look at the village links into the 3 towns. So there will be an element of that. I can't promise that it will link to all the villages across the district as part of this first phase, but we would continue to bid for and secure additional funding to add to that over the years. It's not intended to be a do it once and that's it. It is a process that evolves over time. So certainly some of the villages will be incorporated in this first LCWIP. Some of them will follow at a later date as funding and officer resource allows. In terms of the electric vehicle charging, the charging points that we have on campus at the moment are specifically available for staff, and we are in the process of purchasing electric vehicles for our parking fleet, and those would be charging overnight at those chargers. So we would expect them largely to be fully deployed by staff, and we don't, as a rule, open our staff car park to the general public. As part of the wider installation of electric vehicle charging over the coming years, we would seek to put additional charge points in that would be available in the public accessible aspects of the car park and indeed across the wider car park estate.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Bennett, please.
Thank you. I was going to ask the same question as Councillor Phillips about villages, and I think it's worth adding that on paragraph 23, sorry, about villages and cycling and walking infrastructure for them. I think it's worth adding that when we're talking about villages, we're not talking about sleepy little backwaters with sort of hardly anybody living there. These are substantial settlements that are all growing fast with busy roads, and I think, you know, it's urgent that this is looked at. My other point was, paragraph 14, which is about business mileage. I was curious, really, I was surprised, if anything, that the business mileage claims had only dropped by 40%. I was wondering if we know what's gone, you know, what kind of claims aren't being made, but what claims are still being made, if that makes sense. I'm just curious about what that makeup of who's actually going out, because it's certainly not me. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma, would you like to comment?
Hi, so as I say, with regards to the LCWIP, it would be our intention to reach the point where the LCWIP covers the district as a whole. At the minute, we're doing the bits that we have the money for and continuing on a yearly basis to add to that as we can. We've just secured some additional money for the coming year to build on that. So that is our intention, to cover the whole district over time. In terms of the business mileage, whilst obviously as part of the pandemic, a large number of our staff have been largely working from home, and not travelling to meetings with county colleagues and things like that, which can often involve quite long trips to Chichester or Horsham. We do still have a sizable proportion of the staff who, by the nature of the roles that they have to continue to travel for site visits, be that building control, be that environmental health, be that housing. And those staff are still travelling around the district and have been, as is essential for their jobs.
That's great, thank you. That's kind of what I assumed it was, but I wanted to check that that's where it was coming from. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Anne Eves.
Thank you, Chair. I do have quite a lot of points here, Chairman, so I don't know whether you want to take it page by page.
Well, let's take one by one and see how we get on, yeah?
Okay, right. Para 6, commissioning the carbon baseline. I just want to check that that is for the whole district because it's under the heading of Sustainable Council. So I'm a bit concerned. It obviously would be good if it were district-wide.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
Yes,
it is, right, good. And then the second one is Para 8. The refill was a good idea, but it's been foiled by COVID to some extent anyway. I'd like to see water fountains in the towns. We have one apparently in Burgess Hill, but it's on the first floor of the Martlet, so nobody knows it's there. If you had water fountains, people wouldn't have to buy plastic bottles. So can you factor that in? That's my first page comments.
I think there are new bottles coming out now. I've seen that are not plastic based. One I've seen is bamboo. So, interesting that the private sector could effectively solve the solution without any cost to the council. So I think we have to think about these things. Next question, Councillor, please.
Yes, well, I thought that if, say, New River were redeveloping, they could put in a water fountain, that kind of thing. Para 9, TerraCycle, as far as I understand it, is completely community-led, and the council hasn't done anything to help TerraCycle, but I may be wrong there.
Do you want to answer that one, Emma, before you
we have a TerraCycling group in the council of council officers, and we collect and send those. So that is a council staff initiative. As staff, we generate waste as well, and so we're doing our bit as our own community. So.
Thank you. And we do the same in Burgess Hill Town Council. They have initiated that. Para 11, still on TerraCycle, it would be great if we could cover pet food packaging. I think someone in Haywards does, but we don't in Burgess Hill TerraCycle points. So pet food is about one of the biggest things that I throw away, actually, pet food containers. Para 15, do you have a bike to work scheme? I'm assuming you do.
Yes, we do.
You do. Okay, good. And Para 18, just to point out that our charging point figures are really quite poor compared to national figures. So more work needed. Shall I go on to the next page, Chairman?
Yeah, please.
Paras 22. I would love to see a car club. They have them in all the surrounding districts and they don't have them here. And that would require electric vehicle allocated spaces so that the car club vehicles could be electric. And again, I think there isn't enough provision planned for people who live in flats, basically. That's the problem. Going down further, Green Flag Awards, I really don't get this. Somebody needs to explain this to me. Why? Is it just because the word green is in there? What has this got to do with sustainability? I really don't get that. And Para 26, the problem with this air quality management area is the figures are always improving. They're improving because the vehicles are getting better and the council is doing nothing. So that's a bit of a cop-out as I would see it. You know,
Did you just want to comment on those points, Emma, before we go further down the list? Anything you want to say on that?
I would say that a lot of these activities are things that they are part of our wider environment. The strategy, the original strategy, and how we're proposing to take the future strategy forward is very clear, and we need to be honest with ourselves that there are certain things which are within our control and things that we can directly influence. There are certain things that we can influence through our position as community leaders, through different policies, but some of these things will be outside of our control as a district council. Some of these we will have to work in partnership with local communities. We will have to work in partnership with the county council as the highway authority, who obviously have a lot more control and influence over what happens on the highways and the roads. Some of which will be with our local voluntary and community sector partners in terms of some of the wildlife trusts that we work with. So there's a broad range of activity here. We're not saying through this progress report that all of this is stuff that the council has done on its own. Nor should we. This does need to be a partnership approach, and we accept that not all of the things are within our control. And I think what we've tried to do over the last year and what we would hope to do moving forward would be to take a collaborative partnership approach, so that some of the issues that we can't directly control, we can work with and support other partners who maybe can.
Thank you, Emma. Any more points, Councillor Neves?
Yes, Chair. Para 27, this is a good example of how our council could work with West Sussex. At the tip in Burgess Hill, we've had a lot of queuing lately. It is in hand. I think they're going to solve it by opening longer hours, but residents have complained that there's a lot of idling, and that is bad for the air quality on that road leading up to the tip. Could we put a notice, or get the West Sussex to put a notice out there, hand out cards to people, and get an air quality real-time monitor in there, because that's a problem for nearby residents. Para 32, Cooper's Close open space. I know nothing about this and it's in my ward, so I'd appreciate it if some officer could tell me something about that later. Shall I stop there for a while?
Please, yeah. Any comments on that, Emma? I think the West Sussex County Council, that's responsibility theirs for the highways with the idling down at the tip. Rewilding, I thought that was a scheme that Burgess Hill Town Council were being involved in, but
I believe that we can certainly get further details on those.
Okay, yeah. Carry on, Councillor Neves, yeah. Oh, excuse me, before you start, Councillor Andrew Lee is here now, so we'll refresh this. Thank you. Carry on.
Food waste, Chair 36. It all depends what happens to the food waste, doesn't it, really, as to whether that is benefit or not. And then I have questions about Clarion retrofitting, but we've covered that ground, really. So I think I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you. Any comment on the food waste, Emma?
No, sorry. I think, yeah, obviously that is a scheme that is in development and in discussion with County Council and our contractors. Obviously, the whole path of that is something that will be reported separately by the waste team.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hicks, please.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of waste management, the current sustainability strategy has a target of achieving a 50% rate of recycling, and noting that we're on 42%, and the last reported national average was 45%. I think I would hope we would really that we need to retain that target in any forthcoming strategy. But I wonder what progress we can see going forward that we can continue to make on that, bearing in mind the increasing amount of waste going to landfill. And again, we had a target of reducing residual waste by 40 kilograms. I don't know where we are up to with that target. Given the last year and the reported increase in residual waste. It's certainly concerning that we're going backwards in this area.
We do report quarterly on waste and in particular recycling levels through our quarterly performance reporting that is considered by this committee and is in fact next on the agenda. So there will be reporting on that. Those targets are still proposed to be carried forward into next year. And I have no doubt that as we continue with our sustainability work in the future, that waste and recycling will continue to be a big part of that.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just say Appendix A is an excellent summary document, very, very informative. So thank you for that. Paragraph 29 of Appendix A, I'm really interested. This sounds really, really exciting. It suggests it's a re-tendering of the whole county for electric vehicle charging points. Can I just ask who's going to be project managing this? Presumably the county council, what the overall programme is, and what the tender timescale is, please. Thank you.
Yep, it is a re-tender for a county-wide network of electric vehicle charging points. It is a consortium of the county council and all but one of the districts and boroughs across West Sussex. There is hope that later on we will be able to bring in town and parish councils into that as well, so that it's basically all public land across the county, so that we have a consistent network that is easy for the end user customer to understand. So that in theory, you know, that where you charge your car at home is the same place and the same app and the same format as where you charge your car when you go shopping, when you go to work, if you work locally, those sorts of things. So it is a re-tender in that we had hoped to be able to award a contract towards the end of last year. But for legal reasons, we had to abandon the procurement and restart. We're currently at the point of soft market testing again for that. We are looking at a fairly lengthy contract, anything from sort of 10 to 30 years. These kind of contracts tend to be treated like utility contracts because there's quite a lot of upfront initial capital investment from the supplier. So we're not out to tender as yet, but we'll obviously update members as and when that comes to that, as we did with the previous tender. But it's an exciting project. In terms of project management, it's being led by county, but each district and borough has a designated project manager within that. And for Mid Sussex Council, that's myself.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Andrew Lee.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to declare an interest as a county councillor. I expect that's come up before I joined, but obviously there's lots of county council references here, and in particular about the item I'd just like to talk about briefly. So on item 23 in Appendix A, talking about the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and also it's talked about under next steps of paragraph 28. One of the things I've been trying to do, mostly with my county council hat on, is to get a cycle route going in Linfield and Skeins Hill. As we all know, cycling isn't really owned in any one place. You know, is it a district thing? Is it a county thing? Is it parish council? It's quite hard to make it happen. In fact, it's been like herding cats, to be honest. Anyway, so I'm pleased to see that there is this LC whip, which obviously has been around. And the next step in item 28 is, in the coming year, discussions with stakeholders will consider, and so forth. It's just really a request. I'd like to be considered as one of those stakeholders to be involved in this, because it's something that I'm very keen on. Clearly, the more cycle routes we can have in the district, the better, for numerous reasons, which I'm sure we all are aware of. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Comments are noted. Councillor Coote.
Thank you. Yes, at yesterday's design guide, charging points were mentioned, and the gentleman whose name I forget, he seemed to, well, he wasn't terribly keen on charging points, and it amazed me. Another question is, are we still having 3 different kinds of charging point? Tesla used to have their own, or have we got them all to one now? Or we, how do people go on if they've got a Tesla and they get up to the wrong point?
Emma, do you have the technical expertise to answer that? Don't mean to be rude.
A little bit. Obviously, as a district council, we do very much support electric vehicle charging. So that is, I'm surprised that you felt that, Councillor Coates, because it is something that as a council we very much support. In terms of the different types, Tesla is kind of a law unto itself, and it's kind of, if you think, it's kind of the difference in EV charging is it's the difference between an iPhone and an Android phone. They have their own way of doing things, their own way of plugging them in, and everybody else does it a slightly different way. I don't see that changing anytime soon. We do have some issues in that occasionally we do get Tesla drivers who try to plug their Tesla cars into our normal EV chargers, and that's quite often what damages and breaks them. Because they have different voltages and things that they need. There's probably much more technical explanations for that, but it's above my professional knowledge in this area. So that will continue, but there is increasing compatibility across this technology. And that is something that we would work with any new supplier to ensure that whatever we put in was constantly kept up to date and up to speed. The other variation that you tend to get is on the speed of charging. And with that comes obviously implications for the cost. The faster the charge, the more it costs. So you go from everything from trickle charging, which is effectively not that different from plugging it into a plug socket in your home, right up to super fast, which can, charge buses in a matter of hours. So there's a broad range, but it is an evolving technology, and that is something that we're working very closely with specialists at the Energy Saving Trust, and with Department of Transport and with OZEV to make sure that anything that we do procure can last for the future and be sustainable.
Thank you, Emma. I'm sure members are aware there's another evolving replacement for fossil fuel, evolving other technology, green hydrogen. You're seeing now buses and cars and trains and even their airplanes now, they're evolving. So I think probably 10 years time it might be the Betamax versus the VHS. Councillor Trumbull, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm probably one of the few around who can remember or even had a Betamax. But gosh, that was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Show my age. Yeah.
Yes, so am I. With topics like these, I think it's very easy to think that we can change the world and have that desire. But I would emphasize that what we have to do is focus on things that we as a district council can do, we can achieve, we can influence, and we can change. We can't change the world. There are certain things we can do. It's that we have to focus on. And I think it's absolutely right that we couple what we are looking at here with economic development, build back better. So that was my first point, Chairman. On the group that we are talking of setting up, gosh, I think the chairman of that is going to have a very interesting time. But on other points, as you all know, I like measurement. In paragraph 23, as an example, in paragraph 23, we talk about supporting increased walking and cycling. What does increased walking and cycling mean? Does that mean I walk quicker? Does that mean several people more walk and cycle? I'd like to know what that means, how we measure it. Equally, we talk about in paragraph 32, rewilding, and this will be evaluated. I'd like to know, one, what consultation was taken to gather people's views on whether they want rewilding, and two, how we will evaluate that and measure the success and then judge whether or not we wish to carry this scheme forward. Thank you, Chairman.
Some important points there, Councillor Trumbull. Thank you. Emma, would you like to take those?
Yep, in terms of increased walking and cycling, that's largely measured in terms of modal split. So how people generally travel in their local area, and the percentage of people who travel mostly by car, walking, cycling, public transport, those sorts of things. We'd be working very closely with County Council, who do a lot of survey work on that generally, and obviously through programmes such as the Burgess Hill Place and Connectivity programme, we've got an awful lot of data from that area as well. So that's primarily what it's counting. The focus is generally in terms of modal shift for local journeys. It's about, you know, making sure that people have options, so that in local distances they have the option to walk safely, they have the option to cycle to school, for example. But that's not to say that, you know, there isn't a recognition that, you know, for some journeys people will get in their car, and that may well be the most appropriate journey, you know, choice for that journey. So it's in terms of that. In terms of the rewilding, that's not something that operationally I'm involved in directly, so I would have to go back and check that with members of the teams from Leisure and Landscapes. That is a fairly increasing common practice across councils and other areas for a wide variety of reasons. It contributes vastly to biodiversity in certain areas. It can be incredibly pretty, aside from anything else, and there can be some efficiencies to be made in terms of maintenance and grass cutting. So there's a wide variety of reasons for doing it. And I believe the trial was to see whether or not it would be appropriate in this area in certain places. But I can certainly commit to going back to the relevant team and getting you some more information on that, Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you, Judy, for the report. And I'm going to take you now to the recommendations on page 9, 2.1, 2.2. I don't propose to read them out. If you're in favour, if they're noted, please react now.
Chair, I don't know if, because I wasn't here from the beginning of the meeting, whether I should be, as it were, voting.
You can't vote, don't think.
No, so I'm sort of not reacting then.
Okay. I'll just check with Councillor Hicks. Do you wish to abstain, Councillor Hicks? Can't hear you. You're on mute.
Hold on.
Abstain. Okay, just sort of check. Okay, so it's 11 in favour, 1 against, and 1 abstention. Thank you. So those are noted. Moving along, Mr. Neil Barton is going to introduce the performance monitoring for the third quarter 2021. Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is the third quarter performance report that covers the period October to December 2020. It's the normal format report that you're hopefully used to. The headlines are that 77% of our indicators are on or above target. You see in Appendix A, we've got all the indicators that the committee monitors listed there with their traffic light status. Also in the appendix, we include the update on the corporate council priority projects. These are the ones that are identified in the corporate plan, and 7 out of those have been assessed as being at green. So it's, as we say, it's good performance overall, but as we say in the covering report, we wanted to emphasise the continuing implications of the pandemic on the delivery of the council services. There's some of our services that have had additional responsibilities due to COVID, and we've mentioned environmental health, and also the increasing role of revenues and benefits. Also, there's a couple of services I wanted to highlight that have had an increase in their workload over the quarter. One is the benefits team in terms of the increased number of council tax support claims, and also the land charges team, who've had a big increase in the number of searches, which is down to the property market and people obviously trying to avoid the stamp duty. before the holiday closed. So in the appendix, we've tried to point to kind of indicate in the narrative where performance is not up to standard, what the reasons for that are, and what we're doing to address performance. So hopefully that's all self-explanatory, but we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. For members, I'm going to take it on block. So if you just reference what page and what item you're talking about on that page would help me, please, across the whole report. Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. May I take the committee to page 28 on the freedom of information request responded to within 20 working days? A very interesting table, isn't it, to see how the number has gone up considerably for this year rather than the preceding year. I would imagine that's got a lot to do with the amount of time that people have got available to it. Is analysis done on the types of things that are most being asked for under FOI requests? Because supposing, this may not be the case, but supposing a lot of those requests were around about the same thing, and that was information that we could provide as standard, perhaps on the website, maybe we would be able to save our officers quite a lot of work, because my understanding is that FOI requests are not cheap things to process, and obviously it would be better if our officers could be dealing with other matters, especially in these COVID times. Thank you.
You make a very good point, a very good question, Councillor Lee. Neil, would you like to take that?
I'm not sure whether Tom Clark might be wanting to contribute to this one, but I know we do do analysis of the where the freedom of information requests are coming from. But as I say, Tom might be able to provide more information on that. Thank you.
Yes, we do, Chairman. We keep a record of how long all these FOI requests take to respond to, but we do try and put material on the website so people can search for their own material rather than having to raise an FOI request. So it is managed quite closely, but the FOI requests are wide and varied.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, if I can refer to page 30, the property and asset maintenance, the collection of rents. In the current environment, I'm quite surprised that we've managed to collect the percentage of rents that we have. But do we have any feel at this stage for whether the shortfall will be collected in the future, or is this effectively a loss now to us?
Is Mr. Stewart here? I think that might be a question for him.
Yes, Chairman, I can answer that. We are expecting, I mean, to put this in some sort of context, we have some very big tenants who, of course, have been almost unaffected by the pandemic. So the figures are necessarily skewed by that. However, we have some smaller tenants, both in our shopping and retail areas, and also in our industrial estates who have been affected by the pandemic. And where we can, we are reaching an accommodation with them on rents. So actually, I think we have been quite fortunate, and this area has been quite, it has also been unaffected, but the effect hasn't been as pronounced as it has been in other areas. So whilst we are making, as you can see from the figures, I wouldn't say a loss exactly, but not collecting all the money that would have been due to us pre-pandemic, I don't think a loss of some 10% actually is too bad overall. We're not seeing business failures either, which is very important. So where we are making any adjustments to rents, we're doing that with a long-term goal in mind of keeping the tenant in place, trading, and able to weather this pandemic for the longer term, which I think is probably in everyone's best interests. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Lynn Stockwell.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have a number of points I'd just like to either raise or just get a quick answer to. So just please bear with me on this. It's a chunky report. One, just for clarification, after doing this for so long, you really think I should know the answer to this. But on the under the community portfolio, the building control, the figures that are on there, how do they compare, or why are they separate from the building control themselves under the management portfolio, the housing and planning portfolio? I'm sure there's a good reason for that, but I'd just like to understand it.
Can we take that one first, Lynn?
Yeah, sure.
Neil, please.
Again, I'm not sure whether Tom might be best placed to answer this question.
Building control comes under the business unit leader for environmental health, and therefore comes under Councillor Norman Webster's responsibilities. That's why it's there. Just to comment on it, that in fact it's been quite busy in building control despite the pandemic. A lot of people are having extensions to their homes or moving, so it's not been a bad year.
Quite. Thank you. Can I keep going, Chairman?
Yes, next one, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
What was this one on? Oh yes, under the community services and policy performance, the number of health and wellbeing interventions. Obviously, that's down. I can understand that, but I thought it would be quite worth mentioning that I saw on one of my Facebook pages that somebody was praising the service that had been provided during the pandemic and had actually lost weight and felt a lot fitter. So I thought it'd be good to know that it is actually working.
Noted.
That's a good one. Somebody's already mentioned the searches and so forth. That's fine. Sorry, Chairman, I'm just having to flick very quickly. That's okay. That was okay. I was wondering about the green waste, where that was down. I wondered whether, obviously, these figures come over the Christmas period. What sort of effect does the collection of the Christmas trees have on our green waste collections? I think that was all on that one. Was that there? And also, has the collection of the small electrical items made a difference to the amount that we're recycling and not going to landfill? Because, you know, all these sort of things are really interesting, and the more we can advocate them and let people know that it is making a big difference, all the better, is my view on that. I think that is about it, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got the Christmas trees and the small electric items. Yes. Neil, are you able to take that? Or do you want to point me in the right direction?
I think on the green waste, the Christmas trees, I don't think the actual weight of that we collect on those makes a big difference to the green waste collection. That will probably show up. This is the report that goes from October to December. So the Christmas trees will probably be picked up in the next quarter report. And the issue about the electrical appliances, again, even though that's a successful scheme, I'm not sure how much of an influence on the overall recycling figure that will have, because it kind of adds in to both sides of the equation. So even though you're collecting more, those kind of electrical equipment might have been taken down to the tip separately rather than put into people's bins. So I think we'd have to do some more analysis about what the implications are for the recycling figure for those additional electrical items.
I think that would be useful if we could do that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Jackson.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. I refer under revenue and benefits. It's understandable under the COVID conditions that there's obviously more redundancy, furloughing and short-term working, and therefore people's household incomes has reduced, therefore leading a greater need for housing benefit and council tax support. My particular question is, has some members of staff been moved across to help those teams to deal with the increased load on their work?
Judy, would you like Judy Holmes to take that one?
Yes, I can. I mean, I think we recognise that there's been pressure on a number of teams in the council as a direct result of the pandemic, and in particular the increased responsibilities that have been placed on the council as a result of the pandemic. As far as I am aware, the teams have been able to manage within their existing capacity, and also despite the fact that they're having to work in a very different way to the way that we've normally had to work. And I know that we have been very closely monitoring the impact on particular teams. Housing's another team, for example, but we've also got other examples. And so we have been making sure that we have been agile and flexible in terms of supporting staff, particularly when we had staff that had to remain in the office to support the telephony and the reception area. But we're satisfied that they've been able to manage very well.
Thank you, Judy. Councillor Cartwright, please.
Thanks. Referring to page 31, we have the footfall measure, and I understand why we get at the moment only the footfall in Haywards Heath. But given the recovery position which we are facing, particularly for town centre retail, as well as our businesses, might it not be helpful to have some more general statistics which give us a view and a feel for how the recovery is progressing in Burgess Hill and East Grinstead and the like, both for town centre retail and indeed for business community. Not that we want to bash Councillor Hillier around the head because he's personally responsible for the recovery, but insofar as that it does influence our strategic thinking and what we do. And it would be very nice to get some handle on what's happening and how things are at the moment getting worse, unfortunately, and hopefully in the future getting better.
Mr. Barton, any comments on measuring the other towns?
I understand that. Sorry. I can just update on the orchards information. We get that is based on mobile phone information. That I understand there's a levy from the retailers in the Orchard Centre that helps to pay for that information, and there has been some steps, I understand, to do similar schemes in Burgess Hill and East Grinstead, but they're not complete yet. I'm not sure if Sally might be able to assist on that one.
Sally, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, it's a really good point, and we are currently monitoring footfall using reopening high street safely funding of the 3 towns and 5 largest villages within mid Sussex, and we will be obviously using that information to inform the sustainable economic strategy actions going forward.
Councillor Danese, please.
Thank you, Chair. Page 32, I don't understand the difference between local full fibre network and converged fibre connectivity project. Could somebody explain that, please? Shall I go on?
Neil?
I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if any of the other officers could assist with that one, please.
Any other officer there who can?
That can be supplied in writing if you like.
Okay, we'll have that done.
Yeah, I'm a bit baffled by, on page 33, the 30% rise in the carbon emissions from the council buildings. I don't really understand the note. Someone could explain that. And then page 34, litter. As we've been doing a lot more walking and cycling down country roads, the country roads are in a terrible state from a litter point of view because people are chucking things out of vans, probably, or out of car windows. So I don't know how you measure this, but I think, you know, the roads from Burgess Hill to Hurstpier Point are in a terrible state. So I would make a plea for, I don't know how we get on top of this, but I think it's shocking. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. Gosh, you caught me unawares. Where are we? Yes, footfall again. I mean, presumably going back on Councillor Cartwright's point, we monitor orchards because we have an interest in orchards. But returning to the footfall there, year on year, I see Q3, it's down 22.5%. I'd be interested to know if such figures exist, how that compares to other similar kind of shopping centres, so we can draw a comparison of how well that is doing or otherwise. Page 32, and I'm afraid I'm turning a bit more into a ward councillor here, Chairman, but we've got the full fibre stuff going on. Some members and indeed officers will remember that 2016 or thereabouts, I did a survey in the SDMP villages. Parts of Falking were getting a very racy 0.5 Mbps, and Clappers Lane indeed was getting 0. I did a survey across all of the villages, and I think from there we started to say, yes, we're going to do something. There was talk about laying tracks in the villages. Then we saw maps about how things were going to extend out to villages, the maps we saw last year, I think. At Pycombe last night, we still have problems. It's not quite 0.5%, but in parts it ain't much better. And where it has got better in places like Falking, it's nothing to do what we've been doing. It's to do with the generally sleepy activity of open reach. So where are we on this? What can we tell the long-suffering villagers, a good proportion of whom work from home, is going to happen for them? It's something we've been promising for a long time and hasn't happened. Next thing, page 38. And again, I have a reason for asking this. There was an issue with G&T in one of the villages. But we are on amber for provision of sites for gypsies and travellers. Because of the withdrawal of the Copthorne site. Where are we on our numbers for this and our 5-year plan? And what have we got in place to get it better? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Trumbull. Sally, would you like to come back on the footfall one, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, the footfall has been interesting and it has been cyclical. It really does reflect what's happened with opening and closing restrictions. Interestingly, the villages are actually doing really rather well as more people shop locally, and the footfall figures have in fact gone up in a number of our top 5 villages. In terms of orchards, that's faring as the rest of the centre. It's just following the same pattern.
Thank you. And Leader of the Council, Councillor Johnson, would you like to comment on the fibre optic situation?
Yes, certainly, Chairman. And I think Councillor Trumbull sort of highlights a real challenge for many people this year in terms of connectivity while working and in some cases studying. And doing much more at home. And I think, you know, we were prior to the pandemic, there's a lot of work going on around fibre, and that has carried on through the last year and is a priority project for us as a council. At the moment, there's about 2,500 metres of fibre being laid in the district every week as a result of the work the council has done to secure infrastructure funding and inward investment into fibre. That's about creating the dark fibre network that creates the kind of infrastructure backbone that will allow internet service providers to offer the gigabit speed full fibre to business and home users. And members might recall that we secured some funding through the LEP for some branches out of that main spur, which runs out of the dark fibre exchange from Brighton into Burgess Hill primarily at the moment, and will begin to go to Haywards Heath and begin to join up to Horsham and Crawley. But then the aspiration is to go out towards East Grinstead and the northern villages as well. The members might recall we also secured some funding to get some branches out into the downland villages. And that will be one of the next projects once the Burgess Hill aspects of that project have come to fruition. So I think it's something that we'll be seeing really strong progress on through the remainder of this year. And I'll just remind members that it is probably the single biggest thing we can do in terms of positive uplift to the economy, GVA and job creation, and is very much something for the future in terms of making sure our area is one of the best connected parts of the country and that our economy can capitalise on that. I think it probably will be timely, Chairman, to do a wider member update briefing fairly shortly on this, where we can go into a bit more detail. So we'll get that organised and in the diary as soon as we can, and I think members will be very pleased to hear actually the really significant progress that we're making on this work. I hope that helps for now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nash Edwards. Councillor Trumble's last point, I think Judy Holmes is going to take.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it's always a challenge, isn't it, to bring forward gypsy and traveller provision. And you will be aware, I'm sure, that councils are required to meet gypsy and traveller provision in the same way as we're required to meet housing need and to provide affordable housing. And so the council has worked really hard to bring forward sufficient provision to meet need, but it is always a massive challenge. We continue to strive to do that, and so, for example, we're bringing forward gypsy and traveller provision on the Northern Arc. But we will also need to revise our figures and reassess the need as part of the district plan review, and as we will indeed the housing numbers. So that will be work that we will be bringing forward as part of the district plan review. And the reference to Beadlands is, as you are probably aware, a G&T site that we are managing, and we are looking to improve that site as just part of the provision, the existing provision of G&T sites in the district.
Thank you very much. I see no further indications, so I'll take members through to the recommendations, which are on page 19, 2.1 and 2.2. I'm not going to read them out. Same process, please. Under reactions, tick the button. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9. Questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10, due notice which has been given. I have none. So therefore, I close the meeting at 18:23. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good night.